Welcome to this 1-hour English lesson. Today, you're going to learn English with the news. We're going to read 2 different news articles together so you can learn a lot of advanced vocabulary, complex grammar, and correct pronunciation. Let's get started.
First, I'll read the headline. A 12-year-old girl from Ottawa is making history as Canada's youngest ever university graduate. This is an inspiring story about this young lady. Now, Ottawa is Canada's capital city, Ottawa, and she is the youngest ever university graduate. Notice here how they added ever. Here, ever is simply used to emphasize because you could get rid of it and say she's making history as Canada's youngest university graduate. When you add ever, it really just emphasizes it. Youngest ever university graduate. Another example, she was the first woman ever to win a prize. Again, without ever, the sentence still makes sense. She was the first woman to win a prize, the first woman ever to win a prize. So you can add that to emphasize. And notice here, a 12-year-old. You may notice that there is no S on year because this is functioning as an adjective. And adjectives don't have a singular or plural form, and that's why. If you're stating her age, you need to add the S. You would say she is 12 years old. So you absolutely need to add that S on years when you're stating someone's age, but here it's being used as an adjective to describe what type of girl she is. A girl from Ottawa, a 12-year-old girl. It gives more information to our noun. Let's continue. And this is the adorable, genius 12-year-old girl. Athea Grace Patricia Dennis, that's her name. Athea Grace Patricia Dennis is not your typical 12-year-old. Again, this is an adjective, so there is no S. She's not your typical 12-year-old. She's a child prodigy who's about to become the youngest Canadian to ever graduate from university. Again, you could say to graduate from university, but here ever to emphasize. Ever graduate from university with a bachelor's degree in biomedical science. So this is her degree, biomedical science. And notice you have a degree in something, degree in biomedical science. If you're listing the subject, you might say, I have a Bachelor of Arts. This is the title of it, Bachelor of Arts, Bachelor of Science. But they're being more specific. They're listing the field here, biomedical science. She doesn't have a Bachelor of biomedical science. She has a Bachelor of Science, but then biomedical science is her field. So you can use in when you state more information. This is the category science, but then this is the specific field within science. So in biomedical science. Let's continue. She started the program when she was 9. Here, this is not an adjective. She was 9. But if you were to write this, you can say she was 9 years old because there are 2 correct ways in English to say age. You can simply say she was 9. This is correct. She was 9 years old. This is correct. How about this? She was 9 years. Is this an option? What do you think? This is not correct. So I'm going to put a frowny face. This is not correct because you can't end on years. You have to add old if you want to use years, or you can drop both and just end on the number. So she was 9 years with an S. She was 9, and those are your only two options. This is not an option. So I'll put an X beside it as well. So you know, this is not an option. She started the program when she was 9 or 9 years old, at a time when most of her peers were playing games at recess. Let's look at peers. This is a noun. Right now you can see it is in plural form, peers. Her peers are people who are her same age, people who are in the same school as her, for a typical 9-year-old. So her peers are not university students, because that is not typical, the group of people a 9-year-old would typically interact with. So your peers are a group of people who you would typically interact with either in a social context, a family context, or a business context as well. You can have one peer and it can be singular, or you can have peers with an S, which represents a group. As an example, a parent might say, are you inviting your peers to your party? Maybe it's your birthday party. And then a typical 9-year-old, her peers would be the other students in her class, or maybe her friends from her dance club or from her soccer club, a group that she belongs to. So you can say peers. You could also say classmates to your party, because in this case, a 9-year-old's classmates are her peers. It's the group of people she would normally interact with. And recess. Recess is a break you get in between classes, and generally during recess you go outside and you're physical, you play, you run around and you play. It is a kid's favorite part of the day is recess. So you might have your classes in the morning, you have math, science, geography, and then you get a 15-minute recess or a break, and then you get to go outside and play. So for kids in school, they call it recess. For adults in the workplace, we generally call it a break. A break. We don't use the term recess. So this is a break for kids. A break for kids in school during the school day. A break for kids in school during the school day. Favorite part of the day, recess. Let's continue. Being a preteen in an intensive university program has come with a unique set of challenges. Okay, a preteen. Do you know who they're describing? A preteen. Well, they're describing her because she graduated or is going to graduate at 12 years old. A teenager, teen is when you become 13, okay? So 13 to 19, you're a teenager, because your age ends in teen, 13, 14, 19. So preteen is right before you become a teenager. So when you're 12, you're a preteen. You're almost a teenager. So most likely it would be 11 to 12 years old. 11 to 12. You're a preteen. And then once you hit 13, you're not a preteen. You're a teenager. So being a preteen and in an intensive university program has come with a unique set of challenges. Patricia Dennis has dealt with preconceived notions. Preconceived means that it was conceived, formed too early. Too early because there wasn't enough thought or knowledge to form your opinion or your idea. So the notion here, a preconceived notion, in this case, this is an expression, a preconceived notion, and notion represents an idea or an idea or opinion that was formed too early. So you didn't take enough time, you didn't have enough knowledge, you didn't do enough research to form that opinion. So notion represents idea or opinion. So this young lady, this 12-year-old, this preteen in university is dealing with a lot of people who have preconceived notions. So you can imagine if you were 20, 22, and you were walking down the hallway and you saw a 12-year-old in a university, most likely you instantly have an opinion about that, because you didn't take enough time to think about it or really consider it. So that might be your preconceived notion. And expectations from others about how she is going to look, talk, and act based on her age. Now, this is something that non-native speakers have to deal with a lot. Other people having preconceived notions about their skills or abilities simply because they might have an accent or they might make a grammar mistake, right? Let's continue. My advice, this is coming from Patricia Dennis, the young lady. My advice for people who are also young, gifted, smart, talented, don't let other people's expectations bring you down. When something brings you down, it's bringing down your emotions. So it's taking you from positive emotions to more negative emotions. And in this case, the something is other people's expectations. So Patricia Dennis is excited to be in school. She's happy, so she has positive emotion. But then she has to deal with these expectations and preconceived notions from her peers who really aren't her peers because they're 22 and she's 12, right? But they are her peers because they're in the same class. But it's a different situation. And that is bringing her down. So taking her from excited and happy to not as happy. So this happens a lot. When something brings you down, you might say, don't let that grammar mistake bring you down. So you might be really enthusiastic about studying English, feeling really good about your English level, and then you make a grammar mistake and your enthusiasm or your positive feelings go down. Or you're trying to have a conversation with someone and you're really excited and they say, I'm sorry, I can't understand you. And that comment brings you down. Or you're watching a movie and you were feeling really happy, but then the movie was sad and the movie brought you down. So took your emotions from positive to negative. That's when something brings you down. Let me write that. So something brings you down. Something brings you down. The something takes you from positive to negative. And I'll put emotion because this really is about how you feel, your emotions. All right, let's continue on. The highlight of her university career so far was completing a 40-page thesis. So here we have again, 40-page, but this is functioning as an adjective, so we don't have an S. What if you took this information and you wrote it in a way that 40-page was not an adjective and it in fact had an S? How would you change those? So I might say she completed, that's our verb here. She completed a thesis that was 40 pages. 40 pages. Or simply you could say her thesis was 40 pages. her thesis was 40 pages long. Just like you would say, my book that you're reading, my book is 200 pages long. My book is 200 pages long. So in this case, this is not an adjective, it's a noun, so you add the S. The highlight, this is the most memorable, the most important part, the highlight of something. So here's a fun expression you can complete. The highlight of my last vacation was, and then you can share the highlight. But notice here, what do you have? Was, and then this is a verb in ing. So you might say was seeing, was meeting, was climbing. Maybe you climbed a mountain. Was eating. Was what? Was taking. So notice our verb in ing. So this is a fun expression. Finish that in the comments below, and I can't wait to hear what your highlight was of your last vacation. And if you haven't been on a vacation in a long time, you can change this to weekend. The highlight of my weekend was, so feel free to change that if vacation is not relevant to you. So highlight, most important or most memorable part. I'll write that for you. Most important, memorable. Important, memorable. And remember the structure, the highlight of, and then whatever it is, my last vacation. Let's continue. The highlight of her university career so far was completing a 40-page thesis on the relationship between handedness and functional activity in the cerebellum. The cerebellum is a part of your brain. I'll be honest, I don't know where the cerebellum is. It's somewhere. If you know where it is, you can share that in the comments. Or if you know what the cerebellum does, I'm not exactly sure because I am not a bioscientist like this 12-year-old is. But that's what she wrote her thesis on. Very advanced topic, isn't it? The paper concluded that connectivity between the brain and hand is significantly different for people who are right-handed versus those who are left-handed. That's very interesting because I am left-handed. You may not have known that about me, but I am left-handed. What about you? Are you right-handed or left-handed? Most likely you're right-handed. Most people are. But where are my fellow lefties out there? Share in the comments. And notice, I am right-handed. I am left-handed. I am right-handed. So that's what you can say. I am right-handed. I am left-handed. You can also say I'm a lefty. This is the casual way of saying left-handed. I'm a lefty. It's a very casual way of saying it. It's not slang. It's just casual. I'm a lefty. Or I guess you can say I'm a righty. I've never said that because I'm not a righty. I'm a lefty. I'm a righty. I'm a lefty. What about you? Are you a righty or a lefty? You can put that in the comments. All right. Right-handed and left-handed. When she's not researching or writing about the brain, Patricia Dennis is a very good violinist, her mom said. Wow, she's also a violinist. That's impressive. She also loves playing with her cats and binge watching TV shows. Binge watching. When you binge watch, it means you watch many episodes at one time. So you don't just watch one episode, you watch 10 episodes or 5 episodes. You binge watch. You watch many. So do you ever binge watch my lessons instead of just watching one lesson and then you go do something else? Or do you sit here and watch again and another lesson and a different lesson and another lesson? Do you binge watch the lessons? That would be a compliment if you do, so let me know. And she's interested in continuing her research on functional activity in the cerebellum, somewhere in the brain. And notice here, to be interested in. This is such a common expression in English, but I still see so many mistakes with this from my advanced students. They either forget the fact that there's the verb to be with this expression, or they put interesting instead of interested, or they forget the preposition in. And if you have a verb that follows it, the verb needs to be an ing. So let's take a moment to practice this because it's such a common expression in English. To be interested in, and then you can have a noun or a gerund. You might say, what's something that you're interested in? Share that in the comments. I'm interested in finding out where the cerebellum is. I'm interested in learning more about the cerebellum. I'm going to say that. In learning more about the cerebellum. To be, this is my verb to be. Interested, always with ed. This does not change. In, and then because I have a verb, it's ing. Now, maybe this was 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I was interested in learning more about the cerebellum because your verb to be is now in the past. But notice, nothing else changes. So take some time, share something that you're interested in the comments below because I see so many mistakes with this very common expression. Let's continue. I'll probably pick it back up when I have my own lab, and I can get people to also do it with me because I'll be in charge, she said. Now, when you have quotations, you know it is a person talking and they're reporting that person's speech. So these are the words of our 12-year-old college graduate. I'll probably means 80% sure. Definitely is more 100%. I'll absolutely 100%. But probably is 80%. Maybe is 50%. So this is about 80%. 80% certain. I'll probably pick it back up. When you pick it back up, it means you continue doing something you previously did. Now, we generally use this for activities, sports, hobbies, and in this case, a research interest because she's talking about her research. I'll pick it back up, which implies she's not doing the research right now, but she's going to start doing it again. So when you continue doing something you previously did, so you do something, there's a break, you don't do it, and then you do it again, that's pick it back up, okay? So let's say, let me write this first. Start doing something again that you previously did. So let's say you played guitar or soccer, whatever you'd like, when you were 16, okay? 16 maybe to 18 years old. And then 18 to 22, no activities. You were focused on your school and you didn't do any activities other than your school. But then 22, you graduate. So 23, now you can say, I think I'll pick guitar back up again. Or I think I'll pick soccer back up again. Back up again. So you're just going to continue doing it. I'll probably pick it back up when I have my own lab. So what about you? Is there an activity you did? It could be a sport, it could be a hobby, maybe learning a language other than English as well. And then you did it for a while, you stopped, and now is there anything that you're considering picking back up, starting to do again? Share that in the comments as well. I'll probably pick it back up when I have my own lab and I can get people to also do it with me because I'll be in charge, she said. 12 years old and already wanting to be the boss. I like that. I'll be in charge. To be in charge means that you're in control, you're responsible. So you could say, I'm in charge of this project. So you're in control. It's your responsibility. And sometimes you might call a store because you had a bad experience, a bad customer experience, and you say, I want to talk to someone who's in charge. Who's in charge here? You want to talk to the manager, the person responsible. So you might say that. Who's in charge of this store or this project? And then someone might say, I'm in charge. How can I help you, sir? And hopefully there won't be too much of an issue. And that's the end of our article. Very inspiring to hear about a 12-year-old university graduate. So now what I'll do is I will go to the top and I'll read the article from start to finish. And this time you can focus on my pronunciation. A 12-year-old girl from Ottawa is making history as Canada's youngest ever university graduate. Athea Grace Patricia Dennis is not your typical 12-year-old. She's a child prodigy who's about to become the youngest Canadian to ever graduate from university with a bachelor's degree in biomedical science. She started the program when she was 9, at a time when most of her peers were playing games at recess. Being a preteen in an intensive university program has come with a unique set of challenges. Patricia Dennis has dealt with preconceived notions and expectations from others about how she is going to look, talk, and act based on her age. My advice for people who are also young, gifted, smart, talented, don't let other people's expectations bring you down, she said. The highlight of her university career so far was completing a 40-page thesis on the relationship between handedness and functional activity in the cerebellum. The paper concluded that connectivity between the brain and hand is significantly different for people who are right-handed versus those who are left-handed. When she's not researching or writing about the brain, Patricia Dennis is a very good violinist, her mom said. She also loves playing with her cats and binge watching TV shows with her family. And she's interested in continuing her research on functional activity in the cerebellum. I'll probably pick it back up when I have my own lab, and I can get people to also do it with me because I'll be in charge, she said.
Amazing job with that article. Now we're going to move on to the next article. Feel free to take a pause, get a cup of tea if you like, and let's continue on.
First, I'll read the headline. Ben Robert Smith, How Decorated Soldiers' Defamation Case Has Rocked Australia. So this man is Ben Robert Smith. Notice this, his name ends in an S, Roberts. But the second part of his last name starts in an S. So in this case, you only pronounce one S, Robert Smith. Robert Smith. If it were just Roberts, you would pronounce the S, or just Smith, of course, S. But together, Robert Smith. Ben Robert Smith. This man is Ben Robert Smith. Notice these medals on his suit jacket. This is what it means by decorated soldier. If you say that a soldier is decorated, it means that they have been awarded medals for various reasons. So that's what decorated means. It's really used in a military context. Now, what is a defamation case? We're talking about a legal case. Defamation is the action of damaging someone's reputation, and that's done by either writing or saying bad things about that person. But the important thing is that those things are not true. So apparently, the media said bad things about Ben Robert Smith, and they ruined his reputation. So he's suing them. So someone said bad things about Ben Robert Smith that damaged his reputation, but those things are not true, so he is suing them. I'm suing you for defamation. So if you said Jennifer is the worst teacher in the entire world, and that ruined my reputation, I could sue you for defamation. So don't say that. Hopefully you don't think that. Now, how this defamation case has rocked Australia. What does it mean to rock Australia? When something rocks someone or a group, such as the population of Australia, it means it shocks them. So this defamation case has shocked Australia. Let's continue on and find out why this case has rocked Australia. For months on end, Australia's most decorated living soldier. So remember I said decorated represents these medals. So he has the most medals of any living soldier. So he sat stoically in a Sydney courtroom. Let's stop here because there are a few things I want to review. Let's take a look at this. For months on end. 4 months. Now, we could just say 4 months and it would be completely correct. When you add on end, it simply stresses the continuation. So to emphasize or to stress continuation. Emphasize continuation. So let's say I've been having issues with my computer. I could say my computer has been freezing 4 months on end. When I add on end, it just lets you know it didn't just happen once or twice. It's been happening continuously. So you can add that for months, for days, for weeks, for hours, whatever time reference you would like. And notice, because we have for and then our time reference, this is a keyword for the present perfect or the present perfect continuous. For months on end, Australia's most decorated living soldier sat stoically. This is a great adverb, and it means without showing your feelings, especially when something bad happens to you. So let's say that someone delivered some terrible news to me, and as they delivered the news, okay, thank you for sharing. I understand. That would be a stoic reaction. I reacted stoically. But if I went, no, what, why, and I reacted very emotionally, that's the opposite of stoically. So he sat stoically in a Sydney courtroom as dozens of witnesses accused him of war crimes, bullying peers, and assaulting his mistress. Okay, so different people, dozens of. So of course, 1 dozen is 12. 12. I hope you know that. 1 dozen equals 12. It's a very common measurement because things like eggs come in a dozen. A dozen eggs, 12 eggs. A dozen buns, 12 buns. So it's a common quantity. A dozen. So this is dozens of. So it would be 24 or 36, just more than 12. So a lot of people, accused him, this decorated soldier, of these terrible things: war crimes, bullying peers, and assaulting his mistress. But Ben Robert Smith was not the one on trial. So he was not officially accused of these crimes, because remember, in the headline, this man was actually suing someone else for defamation. But instead, now people are accusing him of all of these crimes. And that probably explains why this case has rocked Australia. Now, you can download the lesson PDF that summarizes all the notes from this lesson. Just look in the description below or in the comment section for the link to download it. Let's continue. The 44-year-old had brought the case. So notice the past perfect. He had brought the case before he was accused of war crimes. So remember, the past perfect is used for a past action before another past action. Past action before another past action. So I'll write out that full sentence. He had brought the case. When you bring a case to the criminal justice system, it just means you start or initiate a legal process. He had brought the case, the defamation case, before he was accused of war crimes. So remember, we have the past perfect, and then this is the older action, and then we have the past simple for the newer action, but they are both past actions. The 44-year-old had brought the case, suing 3 Australian newspapers over a series of articles in 2018, which he says defamed him. So this is the verb form. Remember, before we had defamation, which is a noun, but here, to defame someone, that's the verb form. So the verb form is to defame someone, to defame. So the media defamed him. You defamed me when you said I was the world's worst teacher, so I'm suing you. Don't worry, I won't do that. He argues they ruined his life by painting him as a callous man. So you can paint someone as something, and that's just another way of saying to describe someone as. She described me as the world's best teacher. Oh, I thank you so much. She painted me as the world's best teacher. So when you paint someone as, you don't just say Jennifer's the world's best teacher. You usually give examples. You tell a story. Just like when you paint a picture, you don't just put one blob. You put a lot of detail on that picture. So you provide details, informations, examples, a story to describe someone. So the media painted him as a callous man. What is this adjective? Callous. He's very callous. When someone is callous, it means they are unkind, cruel, and they don't have any sympathy or feelings for others. So it's a negative adjective. So let's say I shared some very bad news with you. I told you that a family member died, and you said, let's get some pizza. I might say, well, that was very callous. That was very unkind. You didn't even offer any sympathy to this. You just wanted pizza. So that was very callous. He's so callous. So the media painted him as a callous man who had broken the moral and legal rules of war. Notice our past perfect again. A past action before another past action. So maybe this is the older past action. So the newer past action could have been he had broken the legal rules of war before he met Queen Elizabeth. Because up here, they have him with Queen Elizabeth. So this is a past action. It's already in the past, but we're talking about a past action before this past action. So he had, I'll write that again for you so you can practice. He had broken the moral rules of war before he met Queen Elizabeth. So remember, this is the older action and this is the newer action, but they are both past actions. Disgracing his country in the process. Let's take a look at disgrace. This is a verb, and this is when you make people stop respecting you or your family, team, your company by doing something very bad or wrong. So remember, before this case, he was a beloved, decorated soldier in Australia, but then it came to light that he had done all these terrible things. So now he has embarrassed his country. He's disgraced his country. Disgracing his country in the process. Before we move on, I just want to see if you're enjoying this lesson and if you enjoy learning advanced vocabulary and grammar in this very natural way. If you do, then I want to tell you about the Finally Fluent Academy. This is my premium training program where we study native English speakers in the real world, TV, movies, YouTube, and the news, so you can improve your listening skills, add advanced vocabulary, advanced grammar, correct pronunciation to your speech to help you become fluent in only 90 days. And you'll have me as your personal coach. So you can look in the description below for information on how to join. Now let's continue. But the media outlets say they reported the truth and have set out to prove it. Let's take a look at this. To set out to do something. In this case, to prove it. What's the it? Remember, the it is that this decorated soldier did commit all these things that they said. So there is no defamation because it's true. That's what they want to set out to prove. And this simply means that they're going to start trying to do that specific thing. So in this case, they're going to start trying to prove that he committed those crimes. So you might say, I've set out to improve my English speaking skills. Does this describe you? Are you going to start trying to improve your English speaking skills? If this describes you, put it in the comments. I've set out to improve my English speaking skills. And notice, to set out, this is in the present perfect. Let's continue on. It is the first time in history any court has been tasked with assessing allegations of war crimes by Australian forces. An allegation is a claim that someone has done something wrong without evidence. Okay? Without evidence. So at this point, it's just a claim that someone has done something wrong, like the war hero, the soldier who committed war crimes. But at this point, it's just an allegation without evidence or proof. So the media wants to explain that there is evidence, there is proof. So it's not, in fact, an allegation, it's the truth. So again, it's not defamation. And notice this sentence structure: to be tasked with something, and then that something is either a noun or a verb in ing. So let me give you an example. I've been tasked with helping my students improve their speaking skills. So, of course, a task is something that you need to do. But if I've been tasked with it, it sounds like someone else is giving me the task. So maybe it's just my students who constantly say, Jennifer, can you help me improve my speaking skills? So I can say, I've been tasked with. And then notice the verb with ing. Let's continue. Lasting 110 days and costing up to an estimated 25 million Australian dollars. Now, in this context, the A stands for Australian, simply because this article is for a worldwide audience. And when you see the dollar sign, you assume it's American dollars. So they put the A to represent Australian dollars. Of course, if this is a newspaper in Australia, they wouldn't put that because for them, that is the currency. This is just for an international audience, so we understand it's Australian dollars. The trial has heard extraordinary and at times bizarre evidence about every facet of Mr. Robert Smith's life. Bizarre is an adjective that means very strange and unusual. So at times, strange and unusual evidence. Now I'm curious, what is this bizarre evidence? You could use this because it's an adjective. You could say, her behavior was very bizarre. It was very strange and unusual, bizarre. Her behavior was very bizarre. Or the movie was very bizarre. You could use that as well. The movie was very bizarre. It was strange. It was unusual. It was bizarre. Every facet of. Facet is a way to say every part of, every element of, every piece of. I'll write that out for you. So every part, element, aspect, piece, these are all synonyms that you can use. Piece of. So of course, he has different parts of his life. He has his family life, his friends, his hobbies, his sports, his work, his community. Those are the facets of his life, the aspects, the pieces of his life. So this evidence is about every facet of, so not just his work or his family, also how he acts in the community or the hobbies he enjoys, every facet of his life. It sparked a media frenzy. So this verb to spark, it simply means that it created. The media frenzy was created because of this trial. So it created. So the frenzy wouldn't have existed without this. It created. Now, what is frenzy? Frenzy simply means uncontrolled or really excited. Uncontrolled, excited. So if you say there was a media frenzy when Brad Pitt arrived. So Brad Pitt arrived and there are tons and tons of different people taking pictures, asking questions. Nobody is controlled. Nobody is respecting Brad Pitt's personal space. Oh, Brad Pitt. They're putting a microphone, a camera in his face, and everyone is very excited. That would be a frenzy. Captured national attention and has made Mr. Robert Smith the public face of accusations of Australian war crimes in Afghanistan. After sifting through, when you sift through something, it means you go through something or review something in a lot of detail. So if I have all these different pages in a notebook and I read each and every page very, very carefully, I sifted through the notebook. So let me write that for you. So to review information very carefully, and you're doing that so you can determine what's useful or what's not useful. After sifting through volumes of evidence, this week, a judge is due to hand down a decision. When you hand down a decision, it simply means that you make your decision public, but it's used with authorities because once the judge decides, that is a legally binding decision. Yes, he can appeal the decision, but until he appeals the decision, that decision is legally binding. So if your boss hands down a decision, because your boss has authority to make decisions, if you don't like the decision, unfortunately, there probably isn't a lot you can do. So we use hand down a decision when it's someone in a position of authority who makes a decision. So when the judge is due to hand down a decision, so I'll just write that note for you, to make a decision. So the judge is due to make a decision, and I'll just note only used when the decision is made by someone with authority. So when that person shares the decision, that decision is final. But remember, every decision can be appealed, or there are official processes that you can follow if you don't agree with a decision, even if it is made by someone with authority, even if that decision is handed down. The judge is due to hand down a decision in the historic case. So soon we will find out, this week we will find out what that decision is. Now that's the end of the story. So what I'll do now is I'll go to the top and I'll read the article from start to finish. And this time you can focus on my pronunciation. Ben Robert Smith, how decorated soldiers' defamation case has rocked Australia. For months on end, Australia's most decorated living soldier sat stoically in a Sydney courtroom as dozens of witnesses accused him of war crimes, bullying peers, and assaulting his mistress. But Ben Robert Smith was not the one on trial. The 44-year-old had brought the case, suing 3 Australian newspapers over a series of articles in 2018, which he says defamed him. He argues they ruined his life by painting him as a callous man who had broken the moral and legal rules of war, disgracing his country in the process. But the media outlets say they reported the truth and have set out to prove it. It is the first time in history any court has been tasked with assessing allegations of war crimes by Australian forces. Lasting 110 days and costing up to an estimated 25 million Australian dollars, the trial has heard extraordinary and at times bizarre evidence about every facet of Mr. Robert Smith's life. It sparked a media frenzy, captured national attention, and has made Mr. Robert Smith the public face of accusations of Australian war crimes in Afghanistan. After sifting through volumes of evidence, this week a judge is due to hand down a decision in the historic case.
Amazing job with this lesson. If you're up for it, I have another lesson right here that I know you're going to love. And make sure you get your free speaking guide where I share 6 tips on how to speak English fluently and confidently. You can get it from my website right here. And when you're ready, get started with your next lesson.